Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 19th monthly meeting of the UK MTB Trail Alliance. In a moment, I'll hand over to Ox Trails, Sam and Kat Hollis. Sam and Kat will talk us through Ox Trails' journey from the seed of an idea, discussed between a few mountain biking friends through to a fully fledged trail association representing the whole of Oxfordshire just a year later. Sam and Kat will cover everything from those initial discussions to how they got organised through to running a successful crowdfunding campaign, opening a bank account, getting insured, and starting to run regular dig days. So having said that, over to you both.
Hi there. Well, I guess we'll start by trying to share our screen, so just bear with me a second. So yeah, kind of welcome to our presentation about Ox Trails, which I've kind of aptly named trying to make a mountain out of a molehill due to the geographic nature of Oxfordshire. So I guess introduce myself. So yeah, I'm Sam Hollis. I'm the chair and co-founder of the association. My wife, Kat.
Yes, I'm Kat Hollis. I'm the secretary for the association.
And we're just going to talk you through our journey so far. The PowerPoint presentation is just basically a PowerPoint for picture prompts just to try and guide us through it. So I'll start off with the sales pitch. What is how do we describe Ox Trails? So we started off as Oxfordshire Trail Association formally back in 2024 in September. And we kind of renamed ourselves kind of Ox Trails just to make it all sound a bit slickier. And our mission really is to kind of develop and maintain off-road cycling trails across the whole county of Oxfordshire, ensuring a sustainable network of trails and tracks for all abilities. I think firstly, the reason why we thought we'd go for the whole of Oxfordshire is because unlike more popular places to ride throughout the country, whether it's like South Wales, Forest of Dean, Yorkshire, you know, that there are areas that have got real high trail density. So you can kind of pick a patch and you've got a lot to work with there. And we just don't have that where we're based. So we thought, well, the only way to really kind of make a difference is to tackle it county-wide, hence why we've gone for the whole county of Oxfordshire. Now, like most associations, like for the people on the calls here, you tend to have kind of objectives. And, you know, our kind of primary objectives really is to, you know, work in partnership with councils and landowners to develop tracks and trails, work with communities to make sure those tracks and trails are fit for purpose, raise funds for all of that work and coordinate maintenance days. And when you start to kind of think about interacting with landowners and responsibilities, we're not trying to kind of take on ownership of a load of places. What we're trying to do is be enablers. And we kind of understand that kind of each trail, each track, it will have its own kind of own case. But long term, there's some other things we really want to look at as well, which is making sure we can provide space for all ages, abilities, promote diversity in cycling, promoting health and well-being, promoting harmony between trail users, because we all know there's always that friction between cyclists and walkers and dog walkers. And we think there's a lot of work to be done there, particularly in Oxfordshire, and trying to encourage that kind of social and responsible cycling. So that's what Ox Trails is kind of here for. But where did it start? So I think that one thing that really kind of made me kind of look into this is becoming a dad. So this is a picture of my daughter Sophie about 6 months ago. So she's a year and a half now, and well, most of my riding, because there isn't a lot going on in Oxfordshire, requires us to kind of ride 2 to 3 hours to our riding location most weekends. And as soon as you've got a little one, that's not really sustainable long term. So you can kind of see on that map there in the middle, that blue dot is where we're based. And you can just see that Oxfordshire and actually a bit of the surrounding counties, it's just one big blank spot. So we're like, well, I want to try and ride more from home. I need to improve what's going on. And what really kind of got us started is the picture on the side there is the local BMX track just around the corner from our house called Barrow Hills. Now, it's pretty dated, pretty poor state of repair. I think it's been there for probably best part of 2 decades. And some people do use it, but actually it's just really not fit for purpose. So me and my colleague Gordon, who's one of our other co-founder, were like, oh, right, okay, well, why don't we see if we can try and do something about that? We've both got young families. why don't we see if we can, kind of lobby the council to try and get this spot rebuilt? As you can see, it's quite a big spot, loads of potential. So that's really where the inspiration kind of came from, to go, right, let's do something. So that's kind of leads us on to how it got started. So a couple of random references here, which I'll come on to in a second. We really kind of started with a chat with the district council. So I think one lunchtime at work, we just called round just to find out who was responsible for the spot, and we ended up speaking with someone in the district council, and a member of the active communities team wanted to actually have a meeting with us. So we grabbed a coffee with them, had a bit of a chat, explained to them about our enthusiasm, our background in cycling, and the potential that site has to offer. And they kind of really planted the seed in our mind very early on that the council that we were working with in particular didn't have a lot of money to hand. Most of the SIL funding had dried up for other projects. So if we really wanted to do something about it, we would be in a stronger position if we formed our own organisation that could attract funding that the council wouldn't have access to. But they kind of said to us, well, that's really good, but there's also another BMX track in South Abingdon, which we'd like you to look at first, because it's considered a deprived area and hits higher on their objectives list. So that kind of presented kind of the first opportunity of, okay, there's probably more to it than just looking at this one BMX track around the corner from our house. There's probably another project there. And our kind of nearest, well, the only actual sanctioned kind of mountain bike riding spot in Oxfordshire is Badbury Clumps, and I think quite a few of you on the call probably have heard of it before, and knew the old dig crew there relatively well. I'd started kind of helping out a little bit, but they announced that they wanting to kind of step back and needed some other people to kind of step in and run the site. So all of a sudden we had a couple of opportunities being presented to ourselves. So it just makes sense. I thought, well, maybe we need to create a trail association. And I absolutely love the mountain biking community, absolutely love mountain biking. And I thought that was just such a great way to kind of give back and get more involved. So with everything, it starts in a pub. So we kind of contacted a load of mates that thought they'd be interested. We even kind of floated an idea around Facebook to see if anyone would be interested to support on the local Abingdon town chat where both those tracks are based. And in September, we actually did our first kind of like official meeting where we thought we'd start everything. So excuse the political reference, but I thought this was quite useful, is about a coalition of the willing. So I think one thing we learned early on is about making sure you have got the right people that are really kind of willing to get involved. And we've been really, really lucky from the outset. Not everyone that started the journey with us is still with us, because they've realized how much work it is. But we've been really fortunate throughout this journey to meet some really good people, some really passionate people, and they've just been absolutely outstanding with the amount of effort they've put into supporting this. And as we've kind of brought people together, really kind of learned how to kind of play to people's strengths to try and get the best out of people. So that's how it all kind of started coming together. So once we brought our people together, we had these opportunities, we needed to kind of mobilize. And actually, it's Robin I need to kind of thank for this, because I was just randomly calling people to try and get a bit of advice and stumbled across UK Mountain Bike Trail Alliance, gave Robin a call, and he kind of steered me in the right direction of, well, actually you probably need to set up as an unincorporated association. I appreciate all these little kind of visual cues, probably things that make sense to a lot of people, but I don't think I appreciated as much when we first started the journey how much I needed to just treat this like work. So for us to really kind of get properly mobilized, we looked at kind of model constitutions off the Charity Commission website. We painstakingly writ a constitution, pulled a board of trustees together, and then we started down the lines of getting a bank account, and that took months to try and get sorted, not because the paperwork was difficult, but just the checks and balances and the waiting list through the bank to get it done was quite a lot. And then it's just figuring out how we kind of basically do all the business management stuff in the background. And I kind of got the GoFundMe thing at the end, but actually that's one of the most important things early on, was actually to try and get money to kind of help some of this work. But we were thinking about how we can do things on the cheap, so just kind of using like Google Drive for kind of like free kind of online office tools, simple kind of Squarespace stuff to bring a website together. I think at reframing, someone mentioned about Canva for all of your design. And then once we kind of got a successful kind of GoFundMe campaign going, we had enough money then to get some public liability insurance. And I think one of the things kind of, again, I kind of learned early on is just how many different hats you need to wear. And even though we've got quite a few people involved, people have got limited time. So I've kind of gone from being a chair to kind of information coordinator to kind of brand designer to marketing. So you kind of have to adapt to all these little different roles to kind of get things working. But I'll GoFundMe to start off with. It was a little bit slow, but I think we've probably raised about £1,700 so far. And that really helped us to try and kind of get things like the public liability insurance kind of moving. And that's been quite interesting to try and figure out exactly what we needed. Considering that we need to, cover ourselves for fundraising events, for actual work on the trails, to be using power tools, and kind of understanding what our duties are as a kind of an organisation. So we've kind of got public liability, employers' liability, professional indemnity, trustee liability, because we're an unincorporated association, we're personally liable. It's really important to get that possible damage for all of our tooling. So that's kind of where we got to, and that took quite a bit of time to pull all that together. So on the face of it, it doesn't seem like as an association you're doing much, but you've got all this stuff going on in the background. And actually sometimes until you get a website, there's little interaction you can really do. And once we kind of had that in place, we could really start engaging with different stakeholders. So early dig day. So this is where we really kind of got started. And a lot of this lies with our work with the National Trust at Badbury Clumps. So as I mentioned, we had this opportunity with Badbury Clumps, and we started some early engagement with the National Trust. And I can't sing their praises enough, actually. They've been absolutely brilliant to engage with. The main ranger head ranger we're dealing with, Joe Mayled's just been absolutely spot on. And not all of the things I'm taking you through is kind of in sequence. We didn't have all of our kind of mobilisation in place before we started doing dig days, but we started kind of getting involved with the National Trust early on, and unfortunately areas in at Badbury Clumps were starting to fall apart, and you can see on the second picture there, that's one of our drop-off features, which was just kind of falling to pieces. And it was the right thing to basically just kind of get in there ASAP to just start running dig days and repairing stuff. Now, there's already two other people that are doing a bit of digging work there, but the thing that we kind of brought was the organisation, the communication, and bringing a bit of a team together. So you can see we've gone from some quite ropey features to things that, we think kind of have been well built and stand the test of time. And that's where we started trying to build up our collection of tools. And that was quite interesting as well. We kind of picked up this really heavy tool safe. So trying to get that to the National Trust site was quite interesting. You can see us trying to drag it there. So these were the things that we were kind of doing in our first kind of set of dig days. And I think that's like the thing that really energizes you. When you pull a group of people together, some people you've just never met before, and they put in absolutely hard graft. And, those of you on the call that are experienced with digging, you'll know that to pack out a drop off or rebuild a berm, that's some serious material to shovel. And what's been really nice from those early dig days is like the local riding community have kind of recognized that. And we've just had some really, really good feedback that the work that we've been doing has really kind of started to make a difference in the place. The only thing is it's actually ruined riding for us there. It means every time I go there, I just see more stuff that needs to be done. But it's from that, it's been really, really good. So I thought one thing I'd kind of include is about kind of making friends and building a community. And this has been something that's been absolutely essential to our journey, and I'd wanted to kind of reference all the kind of the different organisations that we've been talking to, people that have kind of helped us along the way, and those that we've kind of engaged with. I mentioned the National Trust, and they've been really, really good to deal with. They've seen how passionate we are. They've treated us as professionals, and we're building some really strong relationships there. Clump Riders, so that's actually like a pre-existing kind of Facebook chat from the Bradbury Clumps riding site, and we've used that actually as our main point of engagement, and that's where we've really been able to kind of build a community together. So that's where we've been getting our volunteers for dig days, and you can just see that the engagement and the passion from people just kind of builds up more and more. I kind of mentioned ROSPA, so I don't know if many people have heard of ROSPA. It's a kind of a safety consultancy and training organisation, and one of our members is the MD for ROSPA and the head of play safety. And the support from him, David Yearley, has been absolutely essential. They've been able to kind of provide us contribution in kind, which has allowed us to kind of upskill, which I'll kind of mention in one of my next slides. So, they provided us probably over £1,000 worth of training, which has enabled us to kind of increase our capabilities. I kind of mentioned Brink as well, because we'd been engaging on Facebook. Matt Clark from Brink, who I believe he's one of the owners or co-owners. We got into kind of a conversation online because he was interested to know a little bit more about riding in the area since he's moved to Oxford. And one of his jobs is in marketing, and he was able to give me a load of useful information about how to market ourselves, how to kind of have a brand, how we need to be on top of our social media. And myself being an engineer, that's not kind of second nature to us. So having that was really, really helpful. Mentioned about the support from Robin, that was really useful in the early days. Firecrest, obviously, Ian's on the call. I think from one of these meetings, Ian reached out and said, if you need a chat, let us know. We went for a coffee and a bike ride, and I think it was probably one of the most exciting mentoring sessions, or I'd call it a mentoring session, that I've had, and it just kind of opened my eyes up to how we need to do things and the potential as well. I kind of mentioned Dean Trail Volunteers. I had quite a lot of chats with Andy at Reframing. That was really helpful, and actually we spied on their website loads whilst we were setting up. So kind of just piecing all these bits together has just been really kind of critical for it. We kind of got a few other bike shops and brands there that they've been helping us out with freebies that we're going to be using for kind of like fundraising events, which has been good. And just Reframing MTB, that was an awesome event to kind of go to, helps us with connections, and just kind of piecing this all together. It kind of provides you with lots of energy to kind of run what you're doing, kind of puts a bit of faith in yourself to know that you're doing the right things, but then just gives you all those connections where you can just kind of progress. I should add Vela Solutions on there as well. They've been awesome to talk to. And finally, Trailpot, Chris at Trailpot, he actually kind of connected us with the BBC, which kind of presented a bit of an interesting time for us, didn't it? So it kind of brings me on to the next slide of it in the news. So this really caught us off guard, and I think if I could add media training to our kind of training list, I would have definitely done so. So we ended up going on to BBC Radio Oxford for kind of a short slot on Sophie Law's show, and I thought, no one will listen to it. It will just be, maybe one or two people would hear of it, and actually ended up blowing up. From that we had quite a few people even at my workplace that kind of knew that we were in the news. BBC News Online reached out for an article. In fact, they called me whilst we're in the middle of a clearing day, and it caught me completely off guard. Spoke to them for about half an hour, thought, maybe they'll post something in the next few days. An hour or so later, they were kind of posting on their website. I was having to reach out to our contacts in National Trust and the council, because they were getting freedom of information requests coming through. So that was quite interesting, but it gave us quite a lot of publicity actually, which really helped towards our fundraising campaign. I think the only risk is, and maybe some of you kind of have this with the places that you look after, is that particularly Badbury Clumps as a riding spot, it's not particularly big, and it can't handle loads of traffic. So there's a real risk of kind of over populating that trail location. So we've been quite careful to really kind of ramp down our comms about that site, because we don't want to kind of have good press negatively affects the sustainability on the trails. But from that as well, we had opportunity to go on That's TV, and Oxford Mail did an article for us as well. Some really kind of interesting reading the comments on social media. I think Oxford Mail, most of the people just moaned about a unofficial riding spot outside the city of Oxford, which had nothing to do about, but it was a real kind of baptism of fire about the impact of what you say. And actually, when you say something, you've got to be absolutely clear that you've put it across in the right way, because sometimes they can twist it and spin it to try and make it suit the headline of an article. So leveling up. So once we kind of mobilise, we're like, right, we're kind of at the stages now that we really need to kind of step things up. And I've got a background in kind of operational health and safety, so making sure that you've got policies, procedures, you can demonstrate competency is really, really key. So because of the support from Rosber and from our kind of GoFundMe, I've been able to get fully certified in brush cutters and trimming, which has satisfied National Trust requirements. So now I'm kind of let loose with the full metal blade brush cutter, which really helps our work on site. And National Trust do all of their own trail inspections, and we've recognised an opportunity that we can really help them out on that. So we've got ourselves fully certified in trail inspection. Well, hopefully the certification should be coming soon through from Ian. I kind of mentioned about policies and procedures. You know, we have to make sure we've got kind of GDPR policy, privacy policy, safeguarding policy, getting all that in place. Making sure we've got like a health and safety officer that can oversee this all. We're putting ourselves through first aid training. We're kind of ramping up our fundraising efforts. So there's much more than just doing a GoFundMe. And I think some of you that have been doing this for a while know that there's quite a lot of creative ways that you need to try and raise funds. And just kind of going out and getting more kits. You know, we started off with a couple of tools, but realising we need way more Makita batteries, because that's our tools of choice. Getting things like event easy ups. And I think one of the biggest things we kind of learned from massive fundraising efforts, which hasn't been that fruitful, is that because we're only an unincorporated association, that's really been a blocker to us actually getting many grants. So we're planning to kind of launch as a CIO at some point this year. So we're putting a lot of effort in to try and kind of move that application forward. So our current portfolio now, I think when you look at this, you think, wow, that's quite a lot, and it is quite ambitious. But this is something we're kind of looking at over time. I just want to kind of give people a feel for, you know, what we're looking into and what our ambitions are as well. So I mentioned about Badbury Clump. That's where we're kind of operational. We're doing work. We're looking after the trails. We're still waiting to kind of finalise that agreement with National Trust about that relationship, because we've still been operating as National Trust volunteers under their risk assessments on public liability. But we're going to be finalising those arrangements over the next couple of weeks. We've completed a proposal for Southampton BMX track that we're taking to the district council, that we're actually kind of proposing as a community build project. So the idea is that we engage the community and actually build it ourselves, which is actually a really kind of ambitious thing to try and do. But in a location that's kind of short on funding, we thought that was a really good way to kind of prove to the council what we can do and how we can bring a community together. And so, yeah, that's kind of one that's probably like our primary project moving forward. Having heavy engagement with the council to try and get an agreement for a pump track in Didcot where there is access to funding. Barry Hills that I mentioned at the start, that project still seems further and further away as we're looking at other things, but I'd say that's where my kind of real vision is. My vision for that is to actually turn it into a kind of a UCI sanctioned competition level pump track. And I've been speaking with our local council's economic development team, and are quite excited by that prospect. But what we're trying to do is build up a really healthy portfolio of work. So when we're kind of going to councils with these ambitious ideas, they take us just a little bit more seriously. Because of us being in the news, we've had local community groups reach out to us for support. So Stanton Harcourt, which is near the town of Witney, kind of the local community mums reached out to me to say that their kids are desperate for a pump track and they've got SIL funding. What can we do to help? So we're providing them with a bit of consultancy and trying to marry them up with a kind of a trail building company. And one of the main things we really want to do is actually figure out how we join everything together. So when we tend to think of bike trails, sometimes we think about it in a particular spot or location. But really what we want to try and do in Oxfordshire is trying to connect everything together, because we have got some really awesome bits of riding. I think the challenges that we have is that we've got no Forestry England land. Most of the land is privately owned, mainly by kind of wealthy landowners or universities. And we've also got a lot of triple SIs as well. So there's a lot of, or referred to as like naughty cycling that happens. So what we want to try and do is try to figure out what these routes are that are available to people. And that's where the diversity piece comes in, because if you're new to cycling or new to the area, you just don't know where to go. And if we can show new cyclists or people new to the area where they can go ride their bike and maybe link up some of these more kind of denser riding spots, that'd be absolutely fantastic. And what I refer to as the Black Book projects is we're going to try and just map as much of the stuff that we know, not to share with people, but to try and use that as an opportunity to go, it's not a bit of riding, but it's got a lot of potential. Why don't we look at that and see if we can engage with landowners to try and kind of get buy-in to kind of change its use or something like that. So these are all the things that we're kind of looking at collectively at the moment across our association. So I think just to kind of round up those that I kind of owe a beer to. So I mentioned about some people that have been absolutely spot on throughout our journey. Dan Andrews, our fundraising officer. So Dan has been campaigning to get a bike park in Didcot for the past 4 years. And just through kind of connections on Facebook, he ended up joining us as a trustee and our fundraising officer. And his level of passion, enthusiasm, and commitment has just been absolutely outstanding. So because of him, he's really kind of kept the pace, kept everyone enthusiastic, really kind of kept everything moving. David Yearley, who's kind of just come on as a health and safety officer. He's the mentioned the kind of head of place safety for ROSPA, and because of his kind of contribution in kind, that's really kind of got us moving on leveling up. And thanks to you as well, because I think without Kat kind of supporting me on this journey, this would have been way harder. So I think kind of us kind of almost having it as like a bit of a family event, isn't it? We've even dragged our daughter along to dig days in the backpack. Yeah. So that's been really, really awesome. So just to kind of finish off, thanks for listening. I love bikes. Any questions?
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Awesome. You have preempted loads of questions I had. Obviously, everyone should pipe up with questions that they have. But I suppose, where's a good place to start? So I suppose going back to your founding objectives, tracks and trails you mentioned. You sort of hinted at this towards the end when you were talking about the Black Book and all of these different areas. But I suppose how much riding is there in Oxfordshire? Give us context. There's Badbury Clump. Are there any other sort of any other riding spots people go to at all? Or?
Yeah, so there's a mixture. There's a lot of kind of hidden dirt jump spots. Probably quite a lot of us aren't dirt jumpers. I think there's a few within the team that are. I think there's one kind of sanctioned spot just outside the city of Oxford in Shotover, but it's not very kind of well coordinated, and it is just a collection of a couple of jumps. The rest of it, what I'd probably refer to is unsanctioned or bridleways, or just kind of desire lines that have kind of occurred. But we also have the Ridgeway, which is obviously quite like a well-known location, but that's obviously quite more kind of bridleway gravel type riding. And there's also stuff in the Chilterns, which again is kind of not official, but you can get away with riding it. So yeah, it mainly kind of caters for the kind of more cross-country, down-country gravel rider. So those that want a bit more kind of gravity-focused riding, I wouldn't say that's where we're fully focused on, but I think that's where some of our areas that we're trying to kind of cater for particularly.
Okay, so there's Badbury Clump. There's a few other sort of unsanctioned trail areas where people have actually built, hand-built mountain bike trails, and then there's lots of sort of bridleway and desire line stuff, basically.
Yeah.
And again, go back to this idea of tracks and trails, and you talked about the Ridgeway. Does your sort of future ambition sort of encompass that in terms of, I don't know, bridleway clearance if they're blocked, that sort of things, or?
Definitely, yeah. And as I said, I really want us to be kind of like the enablers. So if I like take Ridgeway for example, you can't ride one end of the Ridgeway to the other. You have that bit which you can mountain bike, and then it's just walkers, then it's bikers, horses, and walkers, so it's like one thing we've kind of been speaking about in the kind of maybe a little bit further away in the future is how can we try and open that up for riders end to end. Is there opportunities where actually just a little bit of kind of clearance might make a difference and try and get permission for that? And we also know as well that there's a whole collection of unofficial parallel trails that kind of run to that, which have either fallen into a state of disrepair, or we've actually even been contacted by landowners to say, can you help out with this? So we're quite opportunistic, and if there's a way that we can try and can help out in official capacity, we're quite willing to take that on.
Cool. And then, but it'd be useful, I think, well, certainly for me, to understand a bit more about the history of Badbury Clump. So it's a small piece of National Trust land, and there's a scheduled ancient monument right at the top of the hill, which is sort of protected, yeah?
Yeah.
And historically, there's been mountain bike trails there for quite some time.
Yeah, probably about 25 years, I think.
Yeah, and the National Trust was there a group they were working with historically, or never really a group, or?
Yeah, so there was, so actually the land was originally Forestry England, and then it got handed over or sold to National Trust, and I think National Trust kind of inherited the biking community with it, and they decided to try and kind of go to a step of setting up a degree of formality. So there were a couple of riders that kind of led that group, and actually were National Trust volunteers, but kind of the interest within that group, because they've been looking after it for a long period of time, started to kind of dwindle, and that's why they were looking for some people to take over. At one point, the National Trust were looking to see if they could put some kind of professionally built trails there. So I think it was probably about 8 years ago, they got a kind of design quotation from Velo Solutions, but there was, from what I understand, there's heavy kickback from local residents, because there are residents around Badbury Clumps, and also the riding community. I think they kind of felt that it took away what was special about that local riding spot. And that's actually kind of fed into quite a bit about how we engage that riding community there, because when we have been speaking with people online, and particularly if you use kind of quite formal speak like we've been talking about kind of management, complying with the law, all of a sudden it gets a little bit too official for people, and they go, oh, hang on a second, this is not what I want. They want that corporate flavour on their trails. So I'm trying to strike that fine balance between that local community trail feel, but then kind of tick all the kind of legislative boxes for the National Trust and for us.
Yeah, interesting. I remember now. Yes, I think they had a planning application rejected, didn't they, for that trail?
Yeah.
But I think also part of the plan was to sort of close down some of the existing riding area as well, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was sort of a SOP. Yeah. Okay. Now it's coming.
Yeah, I think it was almost like from what I can see of the plans, and don't hold me to this, but it almost seemed like it was a mini Swinley Forest, yeah, which would have been completely opposite to what that riding is there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Swinley Forest is a very similar scenario where, the landowner, in that case, it was Royal, not Royal Parks, the Crown Estate. wanting to shut down all these unofficial trails and manage it by opening official trails, which
Yeah.
they actually, in the Swindley's case, they actually successfully did, more or less. But yeah, that was clearly their plan. But interesting. And so talk to me more about how you. I mean, are you massively local to Bradbury Clump? Was that quite away from you personally, or?
It's about 40 minutes away from us, so
Yeah.
So you're not seen as locals by the locals. I take it.
Well, so
not really.
I think in terms of the riders, it's got quite a wide catchment area to it. So you've got people from Oxford, Abingdon, Wantage, Swindon. So what you tend to find is if you're a regular there, you tend to see the same faces. So when I say the riding community, it's not necessarily strictly locals. It's those that kind of turn up often and talk with each other and kind of make friends. So that I think that's probably because I've been riding there for about 7-8 years now. That's probably why I was able to kind of interact with the previous crew. Yeah.
Okay, and that was actually quite a. I mean, just be good to understand more about how you work with that existing group and brought them on that journey with you, even if some of them dropped out along the way because they were just tired out by the whole thing.
Yes. So I'd already kind of reached out. There's a chap called Leon who obviously did some fantastic work, and the foundations that they've left there has been there's some really good building there. And I'd already kind of reached out to him to say, look, it's getting overgrown in the summer. Can I just start doing some clearing stuff? And he's like, yeah, kind of go ahead. And it was literally just fortunate timing of a Facebook post of, look, I've done a bit now. I need to kind of hand it on. Riding community, who do you want to kind of lead this? And one of the other younger builders wanted to still kind of be heavily involved, and I'd kind of said, well, I'm starting this trail association. So I kind of had some very kind of careful conversations with people, trying to kind of respect the hard work and interests of all of those involved. And I think what kind of helped is I engaged with the National Trust early on as well. And I think when they know that they're speaking with someone that works in a professional capacity and they understand about kind of health and safety law, they kind of gave them quite a lot of satisfaction as well. And I think when some of the other individuals that are involved knew that, oh, hang on a second, this person can deal with that and I can just worry about digging, that also helped quite a bit as well. And I think it was when we started to kind of open up to the kind of the broader social media community, it was just a case of being really kind of careful with the language that you're using, being really respectful to the existing users, making sure that your ears remain open to kind of feedback. So I think it's just good stakeholder management. It's probably the best way to describe it. Okay, know your audience.
Yeah. I've got loads more questions, but Jacob, you had your hand up previously. You take it down again.
Yeah, you just covered my my question, to be honest. So I was interested in how you sort of ended up dealing with the other group at Bradbury Clump, but you've covered it very thoroughly. So.
Cool. Thanks, David.
Okay, well, while we talk about groups, so going back to that September meeting at the pub, and the coalition of the willing. I mean, how did you manage that? I mean, was it a busy, crowded pub? Did you have a private room? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, we ended up kind of liaising with the manager, and we ended up having kind of more of a private room, didn't we, of about 9 of us, I think there wasn't there?
Yeah.
And that seemed to work quite well. We did, I think, have another meeting in a pub where it was just really quite noisy, and it was just too much going on, wasn't there?
Yeah.
But yeah,
did you stand up and give a rousing speech?
Not so. I did feel like I was just doing a lot of talking, but we had to take our daughter with us as well, didn't we? And she was getting a bit agitated towards the end. But I think it was. I felt like we kind of got everyone kind of on board. It definitely kind of taught us a little bit about how to kind of run a meeting, and we kind of realised that kind of online meetings is much easier to pull people together because there's a lot of work
trying to alternate it between online and face to face. That seems to be working pretty well at the moment.
Yeah.
Andy, you've got your hand up.
Yes, and slightly sort of changing topic in some ways. But you mentioned about sort of the how you did the setting up in terms of like insurance and bank accounts and so on. And I know there's actually loads of good stuff on the MTB Trail Alliance site. But it's just interested in what you went with in the end in terms of like your liability insurance, and if you can tell us, how much that is, as that's like a route that I'm going to sort of have to go down myself and so on, and any tips for setting up bank accounts and that kind of thing.
Sure. So I think I'll start off with insurance. So I mean, really, it just came down to us doing some Google searches and calling up some insurance providers that kind of dealt with unincorporated associations or clubs, and effectively just spoke with some phone operators and talked them through basically all the ins and outs of everything that we wanted to try and do. And to be fair, we didn't end up getting that many quotations because it was surprisingly cheaper than what I thought. And because of how cheap it was £280 for the year. It really made me kind of double check the policy. We've kind of passed on to David to double check our policy as well. And so it was actually, insurance was way more straightforward than I thought. But what I kind of did as we went through it is I made it absolutely explicitly clear, we are gonna use power tools. These type of power tools are this. These are the expected numbers that we want to have involved. We're an unincorporated association, so what kind of risk are we at? And it was just kind of really just being really open and transparent with the insurance company about how you intend to operate, and making sure they had a good idea about what they needed to cover you with, because I kind of mentioned, like employer's liability, for example. I kind of went into the call naively thinking, well, we don't need employer's liability. We're not an employer. But actually, if you've got volunteers are covered under employment law to a certain extent, and you need to have employer's liability for it. And it's the same with kind of the trustee liability. That you're personally at risk because you're not kind of under the umbrella of a formal legal entity, because you're effectively, it's not a formal legal entity until like you're a CIO or a CIC. So that's why like trustee liability was absolutely essential. And with the bank account stuff, that wasn't too bad. It just took an awful amount of time, and you have to really kind of make it very clear about what the organisation is about. You need to have like that bit of constitution ready, so you've got some formal documentation. And actually, one of the interesting things which actually managed to, so I kind of referenced the coalition of the willing, is that when you're kind of going through the bank account, I thought, oh, okay, me and the treasurer will be the signatories. We're the only ones that need to be involved. And it was realising that from our naivety that every single trustee has got a financial accountability for the organisation. They might not be a signatory, but they've got accountability to make sure that you're not doing dodgy stuff with cash that we're holding. So when we were kind of going through the process and were kind of appointing our trustees, we kind of sat everyone down and were like, right, heads up, if you're going to be a trustee, this is the the accountability that you're taking on. Feel free now to back out. And we actually had two people go, I don't think I do want to be a trustee now. But then we knew who did want to take that on. So yeah, that was quite interesting.
That's really, really helpful. And I guess, do you have like one policy that covers all of that, or you've got sort of separate bits?
So we went with Markel, and they basically kind of put a package together for us. So the five main kind of products in our package is public liability, employer's liability, professional indemnity, trustee liability, and possible damage, which is basically contents insurance. So I'm more than happy to kind of share our policy documents. It's nothing secret. It'll give you an idea. I'm sure there's probably some people on the call that have got some better experience than I have, but I think because I've had a second person kind of go through the policy as well, I've got confidence that we're sufficiently covered for now.
Yeah, no, thank you. That sounds spot on. So yeah, excellent.
Cool. I just following up on some of that. Did you say they were called Markel? the insurance company?
Markel, yeah, Markel.
Okay, cool. I never heard of them before. Are they the broker or the actual insurer?
I need to double check. I can't remember.
No, it's just weird. Yeah, I mean, as you may,
Yeah.
you may not know. It might be before your time on the Trail Hub, but yeah, I did a survey of different insurance providers, and most trail associations are either using Zurich or AIM, which is the I can't remember what AIM stands for off the top of my head, but the Adventure Insurance Mutual or Activity Insurers Mutual or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just interesting you found one, and your policy is very cheap.
Yeah,
compared to other people's.
Yeah, 'cause I remember we had a chat, and you mentioned some figures. I thought, oh, flipping heck!
Yeah.
So I was preparing ourselves for quite an expensive insurance bill, and that's why, like I was saying, like we went through that policy really thoroughly with the company, talked them through everything. I was like, are we covered for this? Are we covered for that? And I think when I kind of got that price through and double checked it, I was like, right, okay, well that's a bit of a no-brainer.
Brilliant. So and that's fully covering you for liability on dig days as well. And
yeah, it is. I mean, what's kind of taking the pressure off us a little bit is that National Trust are kind of covering the dig days at the moment. And what I didn't want to have happen is that we kind of get drawn into some work and find out that we're not covered at all. So I made the decision that we'd go ahead with public liability insurance, regardless of whether it would be covered by the National Trust or not. And as we're kind of going through the negotiations with National Trust, initially they were going to issue us with a license to look after the site. National Trust, within the nature of a bit risk averse, so their corporate risk team said, well, actually, maybe for the first year we'll stick with the pre-existing arrangements of having National Trust volunteers, so that being kind of the trail coordinators, and we're going to get some other people on board. But I kind of explained to them that you need to have Oxtrails as a community partner, because without this, we haven't got the network to bring in the volunteers, we haven't got the funding to be able to get all of the tools. And I think the one thing that they're a little bit nervous about is us using our own tools. Well, obviously we need to, because they're not going to give us their tools to use. So we might end up having a halfway house about what our insurance covers and what their insurance covers. But the devil's in the detail, and we're still working on it at the moment.
Okay. And then going back to your trustees, I mean, how many have you got?
We've got 6 trustees. Have we? Me, you, Dan, Nick. That sounds really bad. I've got a spreadsheet with everyone's names on it.
I don't think it's any more than 10.
Yeah, sorry. This sounds really bad. I actually have to look at my Google Drive quickly.
But I suppose the point being more than that those people you flashed up at screen on the end, or not flashed up, talked about in detail at the end.
Yeah.
There's more people involved than just those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those people that said no to being trustees, have you managed to keep them involved in other ways?
Yeah, definitely. So our co-founder, I'm actually just bringing up our contacts list, actually just to refresh my memory of everyone. Like our co-founder Gordon, yeah, he's just got a lot of stuff in his home life happening, so he's continues to be a member. We have got 6 trustees. Yeah, so he kind of continues to be a member. Same with a few of the others, and they are kind of continuing to be quite active. So I think in terms of kind of active members, I'm just counting it now. I've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We've got 12 active members within the core team. So we're kind of dividing up work between ourselves, and I think one person, a guy called Will, that joined us, who actually works for one of the councils in the planning office. He's been absolutely pushing our South Aberdeen proposals. So yeah, it's this kind of this coalition of the willing. As you start to discover who's got the appetite for putting the work in, and you kind of invest the time into those individuals, and they give the effort back.
Brilliant. And David Yearley, did you know him beforehand, or did he emerge out of social media, or
just by absolute chance? So Dan, our fundraising officer, he seemed to just kind of establish a bunch of contacts out of nowhere, and he just forwarded me an email of, I've just been chatting with this guy that I've met somehow. It'd be worthwhile you having a call with him. So gave him a call, had a bit of a chat, met with him in a pub as you do, and then I think once he kind of we showed him through some meetings about what we were about and how we were organised. It kind of fitted in a bit with his work in terms of play safety, because he actually does inspect BMX tracks as part of his work. So we're just really fortunate.
Yeah, we get to say the least. It's brilliant. I might chat to you more about him and Rosper offline. But yeah, I mean, they're members of the Play Safety Forum, and there's loads of really interesting stuff happened over the last few years with trying to introduce a more risk-tolerant attitude within Britain, but also, focused on play facilities, so children had the chance to take risks and therefore learn and develop.
Yeah.
But a lot of that thinking, I think, could be applied to mountain bike trails.
Definitely,
and landowners' concerns about them. So there's a really fruitful conversation to be had there, I think, in future.
Yeah. When we first met, he was actually talking to me loads about case law and some of the situations he's been involved with. He gave me an example about where he was a council asked him to come in and have a look at some unsanctioned jumps that had been built, and they were like, we think this is really dangerous, we've closed it down, can you come and inspect and see what you think? And his response was, the only thing dangerous about them is that you shut them down and they've become overgrown and now they're dangerous to ride because they've not been maintained. And I thought that was brilliant to kind of speak with someone from both experience in the occupational health and safety and the play health and safety world that understands that there needs to be a degree of risk appetite, and that play is about introducing risk, not trying to shield risk.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, yeah, I mean, that was. Hopefully, you'll meet more people like that in different areas, right? In time, as will everyone else. But yeah, well, what a win. Has anyone should feel free to ask questions, but in absence of any other hands, I've got a few more. So going back to your experience with the press, and I mean, if you don't have to, but I mean, what did you don't have to ask this question, but what did you say that you perhaps feel like you probably wouldn't have said or said differently had you had a chance to think about it more?
I think we had to be incredibly tactful and mindful about what we said.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about what I wrote now. I'd have to look back through the articles and have a look at it. I think it was, I think one thing is they kind of implied that we were trying to turn Oxfordshire into a mountain biking hub.
Yeah, they kind of grabbed an idea and then they were rolling with that particular idea, which wasn't necessarily set in stone, I think.
Yeah, and I think as well they kind of implied that we were basically building Badbury from scratch, so it completely discounted all of the work done by the previous kind of riding community. So I kind of jumped on that straight away and actually messaged Leon, the guy that kind of handed over to me, and said, look, heads up, that's been released. They've taken some of the words out of context, and I ended up doing a bit of a post to say, like, that's been missed out, such and such. So yeah, I think it was sometimes the absence of information kind of hurts you, as well as things that have been taken out of context as well.
Right. And you mentioned that the National Trust and others were getting freedom of information requests. Where were they coming from, and what were they about?
Yeah, so I know National Trust actually got approached and were commented on the article, and they were just like, we just didn't know that was coming. I was like, to be fair, I didn't think it was coming either. And then I've got a friend whose partner works in the council, and he was like, oh yeah, she's been pretty busy today with loads of freedom of information requests. I went, serious? I was like, okay, I best give the council a call, make sure everything's okay. I'm like, oh yeah, you've created a bit of a stir in the office today, Sam. I'm like, oh no. and I kind of got a bit reassured. It's like, no, it's all good. It's probably needed a little bit of shaking up because things have been a bit slow our end. So yeah, it's just interesting. I think it's one of those ones where if I was to be doing some more kind of news articles and I was going to be making reference to some stakeholders, I'd be giving them way advance notice in the future. Yeah, I think it's when you kind of get put on the spot for a chat and you kind of a bit unprepared, like, oh, would you mind if I just take a little bit of information for this article I want to post before my 3 p.m. deadline? You think, oh, all right then. Yeah.
So the freedom of information request was from the journalist rather than from people that read the articles, right? Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. It's rare for a journalist to have that much time. I suppose they work for the BBC, so perhaps they're better resourced.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know exactly who kind of requested it, but
they turned around the article pretty quickly, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
But talking about councils, and you obviously talked about on your list of projects, a few of the different councils you're talking to. I mean, give us an idea of that universe. How many different councils are there in Oxfordshire that you could be talking to? How many are you talking to? How are they reacting to you?
Yeah. So I'd say that the main two primary councils that we're dealing with is kind of Vale of Whitehorse and South Oxfordshire, which actually all kind of rolled under the same council umbrella, and Didcot Town Council as well. Interesting. They do still feel like a bit of a black box, I think, with town councils. We've spoken to a few parish councils as well, and depending on the parish council and the councillor, you either get a warm reception or a pretty cold reception. The main people that we've spoken to so far, once you've kind of spoken through with your ideas and kind of try to make sense about what you're proposing, that the buy-in tends to be quite good. But there seems to be a lot of kind of yes and nodding, and this sounds like a good idea, but a lot of slow progress on their end. So, with South Abingdon, we've got a really good relationship with the active communities team, but they're only one part of the council, and you need to deal with the parks team, the economic development team, the property team, and it's quite difficult to get access to the right people. And sometimes when you do get access to them, they may not have the ability to say yes or no or move things forward. So, and I know Dan for Didcot has been pushing for years. You can get buy-in from councillors, because a lot of these like town councillors, they're doing it as a second job to their full-time job, and trying to get momentum's pretty difficult, to be honest. I'd say we're not getting lots of pushback. What I would say is sometimes you can get quite a lot of kind of speculation about the impact of mountain bikers, like they're antisocial, or they create noise, or they're damaging to the environment, and finding that you do have to try and set the story straight about, well, actually, hang on a second, these are all the good things about mountain biking, and all the things that you think are bad aren't necessarily true. So you do have to set your stall out quite early on and make it very clear about, the positivities of the mountain biking community, as well as trying to sell your message and your project.
And that's the problem that all the members of our coalition face, I suppose, and we face at national level too. I mean, how easy have you found it to be able to sell the benefits about mountain biking, and what have you used to help sell it?
That's a good question. I'd say we probably haven't done enough, to be honest. I'd say we're right at the start of our journey. I think when we're speaking with people, it's quite easy to sell the obvious benefits of it's good for the mind, body, and soul, and I often kind of reference the fact that from a mental well-being perspective, there's some real kind of big benefits of it. And I think sometimes referencing bits that aren't explicitly mountain biking, that's kind of like an adjacent benefit. So, being able to kind of have a community, have time with your friends, going out on a ride. There's so many things that can happen on a ride. I can't remember if it's one of the journalists or someone I was speaking to. It's like I had a friend that came out to me on a ride. I've had friends talk to me about real challenging times on a ride. Other friends have spoken about their mental health on a ride. And so kind of selling mountain biking as this vehicle for physical and mental well-being, I think has been quite a good way of trying to sell that to people. And I think what I kind of mentioned about diversity in cycling, what I'm really kind of keen to do is not just think about the obvious diversities, like, particularly with genders, but that definitely need to get more women into cycling and enable that. Is there's a massive diversity between the skills of riders and the type of riding that you do. And I think when we've kind of gone out to sell our message, we've not been like, we're all about downhill mountain biking. We want a bike park there, and that's all we want to do. We feel like we've been very careful to use the terminology off-road cycling rather than mountain biking, because firstly, there's no mountain in Oxfordshire, so there's no point saying that. So just been kind of making sure that we've been trying to be inclusive about if you're out riding a gravel bike, or you just want to commute but not be on a road, or you want to take your kids down to the local BMX track, we're all part of the same kind of community that wants to have cycling. So it's looking at it from a inclusivity piece from that perspective.
Okay, cool. Jacob, I don't know if you want to say join in a bit about dealing with councils and how they work, both in terms of councillors and staff.
So district councillors, that won't even be a job, right? So they I don't know how it works around you, but they might get an allowance. So they might get, and it's probably about £5,000. And the amount of hours they put in for that £5,000 is very, very high. It depends on the councillor. It really is like what you make of it. But think kind of a minimum of maybe for a district councillor, a minimum of maybe like 8 hours a week, all the way up to like kind of 15, 20 hours, at like well below minimum wage. So I think it's important to remember that when you're dealing with them and trying to get them involved in this thing that you're really like passionate about, that they're kind of getting it from all different sides. And then in terms of like town or parish councils, that tier of council, they probably don't get any allowance at all. So that is entirely voluntary. And they're like, no matter what the party, right? So I'm from one party, and I'm a councillor in Lichfield. No matter what the party, they all kind of, their hearts are generally in the right place. I found, including like newer insurgent parties that I may disagree with a lot of what they do like nationally, but the actual like councils themselves that I've interacted with have all been pretty good. So yeah, it's about really like selling it to them and their priorities, and kind of understanding their constraints. Often they're not the ones that can they can like on the spot, even if they're like the leader or whatnot, the council on the spot say yes, they're going to have to get like how it will work. If you want to support something or do something material, how it will work is they're going to need to like really nail down exactly what it is that you want, what you want from them, kind of discuss that with the officers within the council, get like a motion crafted, put that to the council, get the other councillors to vote for that motion, and then the officers will enact that and actually do the work. The officers being the like actual paid employees of the council. I think so. Sometimes like people will come to me with like a thing and be like, "Oh, can the council do this?" It's like, yeah, it might be able to, but this process that we're going to have to follow, and that will take time. And I don't really have the power to make it not take time. But yeah, I don't know if that's useful at all, Robin. But,
and what about the officers themselves? I mean, obviously, Sam and Ox Trails are dealing with councils that have got fairly big separate departments. So it's above the parish council level. I mean, is there any advice there, or is that really down to the council and the individuals?
Yeah, so I definitely think in the first instance, speaking with the officers, like the paid employees, not the councillors themselves, it is where I go, and then sell a thing to them, and then have them approach approach the councillors and try and get them on board, because generally most councillors will just defer to whatever the officers are saying. Make this decision, please, and they'll go with that because they trust their advice. Sometimes if you're not getting what you want from the officers there, then it makes sense to go through kind of like the actual councillors, like the political leadership, and get them to instruct the officers to do a thing. But generally the councillors and the officers are going to be quite in agreement, because they're the ones working together, like day in, day out, and understanding like the bigger picture of the challenges that council might face.
Cool, thank you. Andy, I've got lots of different things flashing up on the screen. I don't know if you had a point to make. But I can't see it in the chat. I don't know if it. Andy Davies, I'm talking to.
I got confused last time. Well, the point I made in the chat was completely tangential, but it was following.
Yeah, I just couldn't see it. I still can't find it. I'm looking at the chat, but I can't see it. As if it's gone. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
It was just about using the term off-road cycling.
Right, gotcha.
Was very interesting, and this it sounds like the Surrey Hills are having a similar discussion. Has that been effective, do you think, Sam?
I think it's a little bit too early to call just yet.
Yeah.
I think when we've been speaking with stakeholders that aren't cyclists themselves, it's been quite useful because it's kind of put the optics in the right place. Because I think the term mountain biking can be quite confusing. So I think we were really kind of mindful about the words that we were using when we were putting our constitution and objectives together. So I think it has been useful, particularly when you start kind of talking about tracks and trails, because you don't have you have a BMX track or you have a pump track, and people go, that's not a mountain bike. So it's the easiest way to just kind of break down all the disciplines into a real kind of simple term that anyone that doesn't ride a bike understands.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You haven't had any pushback from non-mountain biking off-road cyclists like gravel riders or BMXers that you've had a friendly reception to that terminology, I suppose, Sam?
Yeah, well, I guess because we're still so much in our infancy, we haven't had any pushback, but we have got people within our kind of riding, our core group that are road cyclists and are gravel riders or do ride BMX. So there was kind of like a unanimous agreement that was the right kind of term to go for, because again, kind of coming back to Oxfordshire as a in terms of its topology, you know, some of the, when I was referring to as like these kind of down country trails that want to kind of document, you know, you could ride that on a gravel bike. So we just thought, well, why do we want to kind of miss out on a full riding demographic because we're using the term mountain? You know, they're off-road cyclists nonetheless. So we thought it was appropriate to kind of cast our net a bit wider about the people that we're trying to kind of impact.
Cool. Anyone else got any final questions? Where did Ian take you riding, Sam?
Oh, just around Rushmere. I have never been there before. I took my full enduro bike. Ian was on his e-bike, so so I was completely out of breath trying to keep up with him.
I'm still apologising.
It's all good. I've just need to buy an e-bike now, Ian.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Ian, we got some time left. Do you want to just tell the group about Aston Hill and what's going on?
Yeah. So we've been working on it for 6 years with Bike Park Chilterns as a community interest company. So it ties in a lot with what Sam's been chatting about this evening and kind of the questions. But we set up Bike Park Chilterns CIC to take over the running of Aston Hill in cooperation with Forestry England. And unfortunately, when we were in discussions, it was discovered that there were over 300 dead ash trees due to ash dieback. And so the Forestry England were left with no choice but to close the site and to make it safe. The tree removal proved more challenging than they thought, so they had to get a specialist team in to do that because Aston's so steep. And obviously they got on with that work relatively quickly once they had the right team. But then Forestry England had to go through a due diligence process to kind of tender the site and to make sure that everything was in the right setup and could move forward properly. Because obviously when I set it up back in 97, there wasn't a lot of records. And so some of those records still existed, and we could obviously prove it had been a mountain bike site for that duration, but the way the site had been managed had changed shape and form over the years. So they needed to make sure that all the agreements and the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. And that process took them to just before Christmas last year, when they awarded us the tender. But due to their procurement process, we weren't able to tell anyone, which was a bit frustrating because we were only told that when we were told we'd won. So we had to kind of sit on our hands and get in place all the bits we needed to make the announcement last week that we were successful with the tender, and then to get our crowdfunder out there. And we've started that with a 3-year membership offer, just because it's the only chance you're going to get really to get in on day one with a 10-year lease signed, and hoping that people would kind of jump on board with that 10-year offer, and the 3-year offer and membership offers for multiple years. But then we found that a lot of people, particularly at the time of month that we went live, were slightly tight for cash and asking us about the 1-year options. So we put them out over the weekend, and they've been really popular, along with donations. And we had a number of small, medium, large donations before we started to kind of get everything in place. And the idea is to try and raise as much money as we can to get the initial trails built by machine. So they'll be slightly different to the trails that people are used to on Aston Hill, but no less mountain bike trails, and kind of in the flavour of what Aston Hill was all about. And then get those built through that crowdfunding model. And hopefully as we go through the next few months, people will see kind of how we're putting that together and start to see a bit of work on the ground. But yeah, it's really exciting. I don't sound so excited because it's just been a very tiring process. And waiting 4 years for anything is yeah, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I did say to someone that I'd never had to wait 4 years for anything, and they said to me clearly I'd never ordered a luxury yacht, but yeah, not quite in that category yet. But it's, yeah, super exciting. Great to have it back, and just excited to show people kind of what it's going to be. And you know, the kind of good and bad of it being closed is people know how important it is to the region. And when I was with Sam the other week, we were chatting. Obviously we're neighbours with Ox Trails, so we were chatting about how we can work together and build that whole process. And Sam mentioned it in his presentation that, you know, we're obviously keen. We've got a lot of Ridgeway in our bit as well, to try and get that Ridgeway link for off-road cyclists up and running, because that would be a really fantastic resource in the region, to be able to say to people, this is how you ride the Ridgeway, rather than those gaps that are in provision as there are in a lot of the public rights of way network.
Cool. And so you're in Buckinghamshire, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're in Bucks, and basically the Chilterns A&B kind of overlaps with little bits of Oxfordshire and places like that. But the idea behind Bike Park Chilterns is a bit like Sam's is a kind of a county. Ours is an A&B. And it's quite interesting to hear the kind of the pitfalls that Sam fell into, in terms of, are you trying to turn the whole of Oxfordshire into a bike park? Obviously there's that concern with some residents over the Chilterns, but the plan is to kind of use Bike Park Chilterns to kind of coordinate these sites and develop the opportunities, which some of those have been around for years and just need a little bit of help. Others are kind of new opportunities that are coming through in very much the similar vein to what Sam's finding with Ox Trails, where you suddenly have this organisation that can speak their language, and they want to work with you to resolve some of the long-term issues they've had with off-road cycling or mountain biking.
Sam and Kat, you've got your hands up.
I was just going to ask Ian, selfishly, have you got an anticipated date when you think the first trail will be open? So
yeah, every day I look at it, I think, cool, we were a bit naive there, but we've said October, and so aiming for the autumn. We've kind of got another project that we've been juggling with that we're kind of, I can't quite say anything about it yet, but it's very close to being announced as well. And that project's got to be kind of slotted in before we get to Aston, but it's kind of good practice. But that's the plan, yeah, to try and get to that point. And obviously it's kind of a combination of raising the funds and then having the time, and then whether the weather's on our side, because one of the biggest challenges with Aston is that it can be built in the dry, but with the chalk, it's much more challenging to build in the dry conditions than it is in mid conditions. So if we have a really dry summer, it won't necessarily stop us from reaching the target date. It might just make that target date drift a little bit. But yeah, that's what we've sort of said we'll do. So we're going to do our best to get there.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. And you probably don't say anymore. Save it for your turn to do a call. Once you opened.
Yeah. The other bit I was going to say was it's interesting with the conversation around off-road cycling, because when I was hired at CTC, I was hired as the off-road development officer rather than the mountain bike development officer, and off-road, it just kind of takes the edge off it. But I did find at times it was frustrating because it can be harder to engage with mountain bikers as mountain bikers when you're the off-road guy, because they're so used to being called mountain bikers. But I think from a point of rounding the edges, it was good. But again, some of the people we worked with could see through that kind of smoke screen, if you like. And so it's a great way of doing it, and we had a lot of success doing it that way. But it's one of those things where we kind of ended up my job title never changed despite some of my best efforts, but we ended up very much kind of opening a lot of doors with the off-road cycling kind of banner over the mountain bike one, because it just embraces a lot more people. And I think obviously, again, if we were doing it now with the rising gravel riders, we'd definitely be going down that off-road route, because as Sam said, you're just cutting off a group of cyclists that are relatively new to it and are keen to develop opportunities, and there's a lot of crossover.
Totally. Cool. Anyone else got any points they want to make, or any questions they want to ask, not necessarily related to Ox Trails? No. Okay, cool. Well, look, I think I'll bring it to close there. For once, we are very slightly early. But yeah, look, thank you so much. Sam and Kat, thank you for taking us through the journey. It's been really great to learn about what you've achieved and how you got there. And I think we're all pretty confident of your future success. And thank you all for the rest of you that's joined the call tonight for coming along and for contributing, especially Jacob and Andy and Ian, and also the previous Andy who's had to drop off the call. But yeah, thank you all so much, and hopefully see you all next month.